Welcome back to the next panel session of
sorry.
the Centerport Executive MBA Festival.
Okay.
You may have just joined us. My co-host, John Byrne, has been sitting down with some of the career services teams, more alumni from the world's top schools, which raises the question, when you sign up for the EMBA, who will you be sitting next to in your classroom? Because these schools have extraordinary convening power, bringing in talented, highly motivated, open-minded individuals, sometimes from all over the world. So who will be your classmates? I think this session is a great demonstration of that. And it's a real pleasure to welcome Kimberlyn Hunter. Kimberlyn is now a senior consultant at Cognizant, one of the world's top consulting firms. She completed her Exec MBA at SMU Cox. And grew up in Germany, but she's going to tell you the story, but you'll get that sense of internationally minded, a lover of art, and thankfully loves to meet new people, which I guess is very much part of going back to business school. And with that same international theme and the Peace Corps in Tonga, after he'd studied biology, Bola Mustafa. Bola is a senior digital project manager at Alight Solutions, and he completed his EMBA at UNC Kenan-Flagler. So both of you, Kimberlyn and Bola, great to have you with us. Kimberlyn, I said, you're the storyteller here. So tell us a little bit about your background, years in the military, and where the EMBA fitted in your plans.
Okay. It's nice to meet everyone, and it's awesome to meet you as well, Matt. I have been around the world in a lot of different places. I was born in Germany, as Matt said. I was an Army child, which they call Army brat, and then eventually I joined the Army. But I went to SMU in 2019, and that was after my 26 years in the Army. So I was in the Army for a very long time, and I had been looking at different ways, to advance my career or see what type of career I could get. And then I ended up at SMU because I was having a translation in the business aspect of what my actual managerial skills were. But I've lived in Korea twice. I have been living in Kuwait, well, more or less stationed in Kuwait in the Army. I was a logistician, program manager, and I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan and visited North Korea border, check a lot of different places, but I like to vacation. This summer I went to Costa Rica. We celebrated my brother's birthday in a beautiful place, and I caught this crazy fish called a rooster fish. So I just like going places. I like meeting people. My Spanish is pretty decent. My German will get us around shopping and eating. So that's me. And I do love SMU. It was one of the best decisions that I made recently. It really just added a lot of value to my life.
Well, of course, the US Army, a case study in leadership and logistics as, the different tours of duty around the world. What then led you to make this transition? As you said, you've successfully moved to the private sector and the senior consultant role that you had at Cognizant. Was an Exec MBA sort of in the back of your mind, or you then suddenly said, now's the time to do something different?
SMU was in my mind always. Once I decided I wanted to come to Dallas, I had my brother was living here, and I loved the way Dallas felt. I'm an East Coast girl, but I really like Dallas. And then I didn't know when I might go to school. First, I didn't want to work for the government because I grew up as an Army person. I wanted to see what can I do on my own? How successful could I be, in the real world? And then at one point I had wanted to be an attorney, so probably didn't want to go down that route just based on timing in my life. And so after I'd done I took about a year off as a break, started looking for jobs, and it just wasn't working here in Dallas. They were saying, oh, you can move here or go back to the government. Well, let me go get the business skills, because some of the companies that I had spoken with, they were wanting to hire me, but they were concerned about just that translatability at the seniority that I might want to join the organization. So I went to speak to them at SMU to get some information, and about 3 weeks later, I was already admitted. I just wanted to find out what was going on. So that's how I ended up. I think Executive MBA aligned with just where I was in my career.
Got it. Well, we'll be talking about the learning experience, classes that you took. Bola, I mentioned, your own international background, and I think you'd worked for an indie filmmaker, Dim Pictures. Tell us about, that past, and of course your decision to head to UNC for your business school experience.
Well, Kimberlyn, you are a great storyteller, so that's a hard show to follow. Yeah, a little bit of my background, like you mentioned earlier, I did serve in the Peace Corps for a couple of years in the South Pacific, where I taught English and chemistry from, I guess, first grade to I guess 12th grade, the equivalent of that in the South Pacific. And it was while I was there that I, caught, the film bug, and I shot a documentary, based on some activities going on with the locals, and came back to Atlanta after my 2 years were done, and got into indie filmmaking scene, and started a indie filmmaking company with a buddy of mine. We made a number of short films, full feature films, music videos. Unfortunately, much as I loved filmmaking, I needed a job that had full benefits and had consistent consistent work. So I got into insurance and made my way up through a couple of different companies to my final role, where I was innovation consultant. And it was there that I was at a critical point in my career, where I realized that, in order to move forward, I'll need to basically strengthen my financial and business acumen, and business school was the way to do that.
So, I mean, Bola, had you considered other, the full-time MBA? I mean, why should the people in the mid-20s have all the fun and go off and do an MBA? Had you thought about business school at other stages?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, at one point I did think about, the full-time MBA format. But for me at the time in my life stage, married and had one child who was 4 at the time. And the full-time program was not ideal for me. I'm sure there might be others that might work for, but for me in my case, the executive MBA format, with its flexibility and the structured format that we have, was ideal for me. Getting a chance to travel in and out every couple of weeks, it was ideal, and I was still able to balance my work and life as well.
You make it sound so easy. I mean, Kimberlyn, here you are. You might be, as you think of yourself, your classmates, you're juggling work, family commitments. Maybe you're sort of saying goodbye to your friends for the next couple of years as you then take on the executive MBA. How do you juggle and ensure that there's a work-life balance with adding studies to your list of commitments?
For me, I had to bring myself back to the discipline because I hadn't been working for 3 years. So I would give rides to my niece to school and, help my family out here and there. And I had really relaxed myself. So bringing myself back into the discipline of school, and I chose not to work since I had been able. So I'm probably don't fit in that mold, but it still was challenging for me. And I totally respect my peers and my classmates for their ability, to make it while working. And just strangely enough, I was still challenged, and what I had to realize was, how do you take all this work? You think you have so much time in the 2 weeks between classes, and it's a lot of material. And then their recordings, you have recordings available if you miss class. Well, then that means if you're going to rewatch it, you're rewatching the same amount of courses that you sat in for a long time. And I'm a very in-depth reader and want to get all the way down to the core. And I had to balance how deep into the material I needed to study so that I could be effective across all the courses. The first semester was my toughest, and I have zero business background. My undergrad degree is in psychology. And at one time in my life, I was a respiratory therapist. So it's not that I don't understand business, but once we got past that, and then just the teamwork, your study groups, your peers helping each other, I just think it's an adjustment, regardless of where you are in your life.
Right. And I mean, in your particular case, the adjustment of going back to school and picking up all of that workload, was there anything that you did to sort of say, I need to be ready for this? Did you take any pre-EMBA courses just to be back in the mindset?
Actually, that's what I should have done. If we look back, and I have a brother who's a partner in one of the big four. So he and I looked at my accounting coursework when I was having little challenges, and I had to get him to help me out. And he said, this is moving really fast. And so if I could do it over, it still turned out great. I probably needed to take the leveling courses, take some of those introductory business courses. Now I've had a lot of strategy because I have a degree in organizational development. So in those, but that's like higher thought. It doesn't have anything to do with the basics of business or finance. And so, yeah, I would have leveled myself out before I started. There was some pre-course work, but mind you, I got accepted in June and we started in August.
Right. Well, I imagine, Bulla, that your 4-year-old is now older. We can discuss whether 4-year-olds or 10-year-olds are more or less work. But there were those family commitments. You had your professional commitments as well. So what was the work-life balance and adding studies on top? How did you manage, time management and really staying on top of everything?
Well, like Kimberly mentioned earlier, the work-life balance is not easy. Anyone that tells you it is not serious, because it is definitely it's a bit of a challenge. But you know what? This is an opportunity to kind of refine yourself, and sometimes those challenges make you better on the other side, and you learn how to manage and prioritize your responsibilities. But I really comes down to my wife, and her unwavering support throughout the program, having a really good support network that understands where you are and what you're trying to do, and understand that this period of time where you might be studying a lot more than helping out around the house is this temporary. Was paramount in helping me succeed throughout the program. And also my daughter, I mean, there are times where I was taking, classes on, during Zoom lectures, and she'd be sitting right next to me, watching something on her iPad. So, and sometimes she'd be right there with me as I'm working on papers, dead, late into the night. And so those are memories that I'll take away from this program, the both of their support, my daughter just, being calm and just making, being part of my inspiration for why I was doing the actual program. So collectively, having a great support network is going to be really important to a EMBA program, mainly because it's so intense. It's very shortened period of time, a lot of information being shared and learned, and the support network is important.
Well, as Kimberlin commented, accounting courses that are moving really quickly with everything that you were taking on. Do you feel that beyond the business fundamentals, Bulla, there were things that you were learning about yourself, about what mattered most to you, values that extend beyond the curriculum?
Yes. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And I did love the core classes. Accounting, I love the professor, but I couldn't say that was my favorite course. But one of my favorite courses was New Ventures Discovery and New Ventures Launch, taught by Ted Zoller. He's a preeminent professor in entrepreneurial, ventures. And one thing I learned about it, was learn how to kickstart your startup. These are different elements you need to be aware of and take account of as you're trying to, put together a product, or put together, a business. And how can you, vet it? We had an opportunity to, speak to VCs, they kind of allowed us to go through round robin and shared what our ideas were, and they picked it apart and, were honest with us. So that was one thing. I loved electives. The second thing was listening. A lot of times, for the program, I would basically just speak first instead of asking questions that probe and are clarifying. And just asking those probing and clarifying questions allowed me to gain additional insight in what was truly being asked in the conversation. And I took that back to work. And, I think just being able to get that additional insight has improved our solution in the long term.
Now, in terms of the structure and the learning, Kimberlin, because Bulla's talked about some of the electives that he took. So presumably a core course, business fundamentals, but then other options, new ventures that you might have looked at. And of course, you had this experience of massive logistics projects. So how did you think about the sort of program that would be really relevant to you?
Well, we are a cohort, so we didn't have the same flexibility as concentrations as some of the other MBA programs. And so in the core, we went, along the path first and second semester. I don't know about both. We had a 5-semester program. So it was fall, spring, summer, fall, spring. We didn't have a break. And then I think maybe the 3rd semester is when we were allowed some electives, and they spanned across the core of a lot of different things. And I leaned into things I was already good at, so that I could take a little pressure, not so much pressure off myself. I'm also doing a comparison, that we're supposedly really good at leadership in the military, but how does that translate or either compare to in corporate America? So I had some amazing electives. We also were able to do entrepreneurship, like Boa said. It was actually like the capstone course. So everyone created a business and we pitched to the VCs. So by the time I wrote a list of all these courses I really liked. I mean, I found out I like my economics. I didn't know I was going to like economics as well as I did. The marketing strategy class was good. I took leader as a coach, learned a different aspect of leadership, but then it also confirmed after we got to the point we could take a few electives, then some of my natural strengths, then I was, okay, I am good at this. How does it relate? And then how can I incorporate it into the teamwork that we do? And I tried to lay back on the logistics, but our global project ended up being a logistics part. And I just let back and let my team, we all came up with a decision. And then I kind of said, well, can we look at it this way? And they're like, why don't you want to go in logistics when you get out of here? I said, well, I'm good at logistics. I like the strategy and I like the higher level concept of it. So it was just really good. And the other thing that they do at SMU, we have it's called the Business Leadership Center. It's a lot of seminar program. And if you participate, these are experts who come to speak on us on numerous topics. And if you can fit that in your schedule and manage to do 40 of those, then you're given a designation as Cox Leadership Award. And I actually achieved that. So that was one of the things that I did on top of what else I was doing.
Congratulations. Great. Well, you've taken us beyond the course.
I'm sorry. Yes.
In terms of, I don't know, the different electives, other opportunities within the business school. I mean, Bola, is there time to also then socialize with your classmates? Or, I mean, are you constantly connected between the classes and then the next time you're all going to meet up?
So, interesting enough, one of the main reasons why a lot of folks join these programs is to, increase their business acumen and increase their network and just learn a lot in a new environment. We were fortunate enough to take the program during the pandemic, at the height of the pandemic. So for a good portion of the program, we were quarantined and it was, mostly virtual. Later on, we were able to meet in person and, engage. While we were in person, we found out that, what did we find interesting about this program? What can we do later on? And how can we enlighten other prospective students about the program? And that led me to create the Tar Heel Hustle. It's a podcast that's about the school, about the program, shares a lot of interesting things that, prospective students might need to know and might not have easy access to someone like an alumni of the school to get those questions answered. So collectively got with a group, got lots of questions that they might have had about the program, and we created that podcast and put out 2 seasons of it. So yeah, we were able to get together, we made the best out of a difficult situation, produce a really cool podcast a lot of people are listening to right now.
Great. So just for the viewers today and in the weeks and months to come, that's called what? The Tar Heel Hustle?
Tar Heel Hustle, yeah.
Great. And you and others that are sharing that experience, I hope that our viewers will download and enjoy that. So, I mean, Kimberlyn, as you think about where you were looking to stretch yourself, the skills that you knew that you had, other skills you wanted to develop for that transition into the corporate world. Fundamentally, what do you think is the most beneficial thing that you learned in your Exec MBA?
Well, I didn't have a good understanding of business in the sense of, there's no profit and loss in the military. So we're just, we have these humongous budgets and we have to maintain the budget. But what does it mean? What is a balance sheet? There's so many variables and so many moving parts and pieces. And even though I may not have been stellar in those because I had such a steep learning curve, I do understand what business and I understand what's important to businesses and I understand how to convey the message. And as a consultant, I'm in change management. So I'm still kind of in my softer skills, but we still want to be able to show the benefit. And you're always looking towards the bottom line. So I do think when I'm macro doing the case studies, I think that's it. You're in a lot of case studies and you're reviewing the case studies and you're going, it's almost like a repetition. You continue to do your case studies, you do your analyses, you have to give certain feedback is required for each one. And by the time you get out of the course, you start noticing trends. Like some of the best companies that were created, they did need a little bit of leadership. Those guys are brilliant, whatever they created, and all the parts together make the business better. And of course we can look back. Let's look back what happened to Blockbuster. Let's look back at what happened to this company. So having that that ability to look at what's going on. And that's kind of how as consultants, we come in and we want to, and it's very relatable to what was happening in the Army. We go in and we're in a situation and we've got to build it to the framework that we learned. So it's very similar.
Right. I suppose, Bill, I mean, you've since UNC, you've continued, taken on a new position, new leadership responsibilities. But one aspect of the Executive MBA, things that you're learning in the classroom, the sort of things that Kimberlin's sharing, you can then take them back and Monday think about how to apply it at work. Is that a virtuous circle because it's reinforcing ideas, theory in the classroom for you to then be able to apply?
Yeah, absolutely. Kimberly definitely said it best in her with her storytelling. But I totally agree. A lot of different either like I said case studies that we reviewed, and I guess any of the different principles of accounting or you know, any other subjects that core topics that we took definitely were easily applied the very next day in class. I mean, at work. So I definitely agree with what Kimberly mentioned.
Did you get that reinforcing feedback from colleagues who were like, whoa?
Yeah, they could feel a difference. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they definitely felt a difference the next day. I mean, like, hey, so you must have learned that in class over the weekend. So yeah, it was definitely transformational throughout the program. The person who started it versus the person who ended the program was totally different. And I was glad I was able to share it with my coworkers. I inspired a number of them to think about, you know, going back to school as well. If I could find time, I'm sure they could also find time as well. So it was definitely transformative personally and also inspirational for some others.
It's great to be able to capture that. Kimberlin, you've done your fair share of coaching now for others thinking about business school, but you know, you had perhaps a clear goal, close to 26 years in the military, wanted to make that transition. How does the Career Management Center then work with you as you're thinking about, you know, future employers, the sort of skills for the senior levels of positions that you were then applying to? What are some of the skills that you picked up working with the careers team?
Well, first of all, when I interviewed with Tom, he said that I needed to go there and meet Annie, and she was my coach. She's assigned to our program, and we started very basic. I already had a resume, I'd gone through iterations of career searches and that, and so it was closer to being corporate than not. But I think what we did, the Clifts and Strengths Finders. So she wants to see who you are and help you understand yourself. And we started with me being able to speak of myself in terms that are relatable in the new language that I'm learning. So I did feel like I was learning a new language. A lot of times I'm sitting there, I've gotten a lot better about it. I don't have to translate almost everything I think about, but I would have all these, you know, ideas and concepts, and they want to come out in military, you know, acronyms or whatever. So we started with the Clifts and Strengths Finders, and when I got my reports back, I felt like that's who I am. And so Annie said, take the highlighters and go through there and highlight words that resonate. And then those are the ones that I should speak about myself. So it said that it's easy for me to connect ideas and people, and, you know, and I think about the big picture, and I'm not really bothered by ambiguity, which is a lot how I am. And then we worked on, we did update the resume to a specific format. And then we targeted, by this time, the pandemic started. So we targeted 2 virtual career fairs in certain roles. And so that's just, you know, I would give her feedback, what happened. So I was really working hard. I'm trying to go to all those seminars. I'm trying to get my coursework done, working with my team. And then I worked from January all the way until December, I think, of 1 whole year with Annie for the Career Center. And I had my job locked in before the last semester.
Right. Now, of course, the festival brings together a multitude of voices and experiences, and it's wonderful to be able to capture them. Although you no doubt had classmates like Kimberlin, you know, coming out of the military, others that were in the Fortune 500, a big bank, wherever. I wanted to ask you about the entrepreneurs, and from 2 sides. One, of course, given your own background with Dim Pictures that you had co-founded. The entrepreneur that's focused on building their business and saying, I can't take the time away from the business, you know, to go back to business school. So I'd love you to talk to that point. But equally, now that you've been through the program, how many could use the EMBA to be that springboard to then launch their own venture well beyond the Fortune 500? So what's the sort of the entrepreneur mindset and how that EMBA fits in?
Well, I'd say the EMBA is like the secret sauce for that entrepreneurial mindset, because everyone has an idea, but unless you have a lot of activity that's moving you forward, and decreases the amount of time from ideation to like actually getting it launched, then it's pretty much worthless. So you need that secret sauce, that EMBA or the MBA program. You learn a lot of the different topics, a lot of different principles that are needed to be successful in business. You learn how some business did, like Kimberly mentioned earlier, how some businesses did well. You get that review window of what they've done, and you do a retrospective on how they were successful and other areas in which they were not successful, and you can take those lessons and apply it to your specific your venture. So I think it helps decrease the time dimension from when you have an idea to when you can truly launch it and get it tested in the with real clients and real customers. So yeah, an EMBA is like the secret sauce that everyone needs.
And equally, those that had the sort of the big corporate experience, were they sort of saying, I think everything that we've looked at during the program, did it give them the confidence to then think about starting their own venture?
Yes, a lot of them have that business acumen, and a lot of them have that they've been in a corporate structure that might have been a bit bureaucratic. And I think as an entrepreneur, there's less bureaucracy because there are less people, and you're trying to figure things out along the way. So yeah, a few of them actually were able to, along with myself, were able to actually launch a business during the actual program. And again, some of them are still running right now. Some of them tried it and they weren't successful. And something to really take into account is whenever you, as an entrepreneur, you have to understand that even when you launch an idea, it might be successful or it might not be successful. What did you get out of it? What are the learnings that you can apply towards the next iteration of the company or the next company you want to start? So it reduces the risk, there's a better risk management in a way, reduce the risk of failure, but also it also, I think it kind of inspires you to go ahead and do it. If you don't take that leap, your parachute never open. So it gives us the opportunity to try what we need to try to see if our idea is going to work.
We can come up in the Kimberlin with any number of sort of barriers, obstacles of why it's not the right time, or a business school's not for me. It's for alpha personalities that are very ambitious. As you reflect on your experience, perhaps the biggest myth about going back to business school that then dissolved as you actually got into the program?
Absolutely. One of the biggest myths is that time stops. You're going to miss out on a bunch of stuff by going to business school. How are you going to, manage it? I think one of the I guess it was a video that we watched, and it really stuck with me. I think the guy in the video might have been from Google, but he was explaining how when you think about life, you're going to be juggling a number of balls. Some of them are going to be glass, and some of them are going to be rubber, and you have to figure out which ones you need to drop. And normally the ones that drop, they're going to bounce and they're going to be okay. Always, keep your family, because that's the glass ball, and you don't want to drop that one. So as long as everything else is moving, you can pick up stuff. If you, if you're at work, you're just going to explain, hey, this week's going to be very tough on me. I need a little bit of grace. Your team members will provide that grace. If you are in a team and your cohort, you explain, hey, this week my daughter has a flu, or my daughter has COVID, as they had during our program. Your team is pretty much very understanding, and they know they're going to need that same empathy down the line as well. So just ensuring that you keep your family, because they're the main supportive network that is going to help you get to that program. So yeah, one of the biggest myths is that once you go into the program, everything's going to stop. You're going to miss out on things, and the things that are important will always be there with you when you're done with the program.
Yeah, and for you, Kimberlin, 26 years in one part of your career, it's still a big step to go back to school. Any apprehensions that you'd had, and then once you're in the program, they just faded away?
I was apprehensive for a while. I don't know how fast it faded away. There were a few other veterans in the course, and one of them I think had about the same length of service as me, but they were all already working, so I hadn't even had a job after the military. But what I feel is you hear a lot of noise in the background, people saying you don't need to get an MBA, you know, a lot of, just like you don't need to have jobs, but there's more value than just the education, because SMU Cox School of Business is well connected. And I knew that. Now that part I knew coming to Texas. And I didn't realize that I could get as much assistance from the professors, because I didn't even really do that much when I was an undergrad. So when people say that they will help you, you have to let your barriers down and go get the help. And we had spoken to alumni before our course, and one of the ladies spoke, she said, if you feel that you have a reason to get extended time, a valid reason, then you probably should go ahead and do that early. Well, I was one of those people and I didn't get it very early. So I was having some slight panics in some of the coursework that was a little bit more in detail. So I am a little bit older, and then I had some things happen while I was in the military. So my brain wasn't functioning. And, you know, my job that I had in the military, I knew it well. So I go from being a high performer in one thing to, ooh, now I have to really, you feel exposed. But getting through that hump, because a lot of people dropped, and then still pushing along. And Annie introduced my coach. They're always introducing you to someone in the class ahead of you. The same way I coach people, other people were coaches to me. People were giving you inspiration, your classmates, some of them were helping me, or even if they didn't study with me, just checking on me. So at that point, it's an accomplishment. You're connecting to business. It's not just school or business. It's very much intertwined now.
Right, right. Now, both of you in senior leadership roles, you know, continued career success. So Bola, sort of looking back and maybe, you know, early stages of the pandemic, maybe one thing that you took away that you never expect, you'd read the website, you'd had conversations with alums, but then there was this one aspect of the program that just was unexpected, you know, perhaps in a beautiful way. What would that be?
The approachability of the professors. I haven't been in school for a while, you know, I had an idea of what the classes were going to be like. You know, I knew that the students who were in my cohort were going to be nice, and everyone was going to be, you know, pulling for each other. But I was genuinely surprised by the approachability of the professors, from Allison Fergale, Larry Chavis, Patricia Harms, Chris Bingham, Maybell Miguel, and Ted Zoller. I mean, all of them are like, they're distinguished professors in their field, and each and every one of them, if you had a question, they'll say, hey, let's talk right now. And like, they'll stop what they're doing and they'll speak, and hey, so set some time, you know, on Zoom or something, let's talk about it. I think it was generally their interest to make sure that, you know, you understood and you were successful after the program. I think partially because of their personalities, and, you know, it was genuine to them, but also reflects heavily on the program, about the fact that everyone, we kind of felt like we're a bit of a family, and you want to make sure your family is successful. So I was generally surprised by that, and to this day, you know, I truly appreciate you know, that aspect of it. And a quick anecdote is at graduation, my wife was trying to bring our daughter up the stairs, these huge this huge set of stairs, and I was already inside getting my picture for graduation, and Chris Bingham, one of our professors, saw her like with that huge stroller, and he's like, all right, I got you. You know, a lot of folks walked by her, but he got her, and, you know, he grabbed the front and, you know, helped her out. And, you know, there are some schools where your professors won't do that. And again, they see us all as family, and you help family out when they need it.
Yeah, now that's a photograph that they need on the UNC website. That's a precious moment. And I suppose not just for the time of the program, Kimberlyn, but as you sort of think forward the next 5 years, 10 years, you're part of this business school family that Bola had described. And it's a very influential alumni network at SMU Cox. So how do you think that that's going to continue to contribute, not just for the current position at Cognizant, but for, you know, the future stages of your career?
We're definitely all family at Cox, and you know that. So this not last weekend, the weekend before, we did have an ambassador weekend, and we were speaking to prospective, and I'm meeting, you know, people from EMBA classes ahead of mine, and, you know, finding out their stories. And even some were offering, if you should happen to want to come to my company, I will offer you, you know, a referral, or just to talk to you and just to get some insights. I met one for me right now, it's just the connection, getting to know each other. But you know that foundation is strong. But my network at SMU grew really extensively with the faculty towards the end of graduation. So I work with a lot of people in the BBA program, and they've allowed me to facilitate some courses, some 1-hour sessions. And one of the ones that I did was with conflict resolution in the Subiendo Academy. These are teenagers, and it was so much fun. So I get to use my skills and just meet other people. I'm sure there'll be some more opportunities. I probably haven't thought that far, but to me, it's like a comfort blanket. I just know it's there. And I know they're there, and I'm not really concerned about it because it's just always available.
So Bola, we're gonna, for the Center Court viewers, we're gonna make Tar Heel Rumble required viewing with all of the insights and experiences that you've captured in that podcast. But perhaps as viewers,
Tar Heel Hustle,
hustle, not a rumble, but a hustle.
But, forgive me. So maybe the third season we'll call it the Rumble. I love it.
There we go. Inspired for how it evolves. But in terms of you think about the right program, the big next step. One thing that really helped you as you were researching school and just saying, this is what I want to do next. What would it be? You talk to alum, sit in on a class. What do you think is really valuable to make sure that you're in the right place?
If we're speaking to someone else, you're saying?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I have been speaking to a lot of people. I think there's an inspiration. Some of my friends have decided to get their MBA because of me, which is like, whoa. Not even having the conversation, just I saw you do it. And that was powerful. And I believe that for us coming out of the military, I'm just going to speak to that population right now. It's maybe even more so some of the women, because I hear a lot of doubt and I hear a lot of apprehension. Like, what can I do? Very accomplished people. And I think that this is a great learning. I don't mean it was a safe space to learn. It's a safe space to decompress and try to figure out who you are. You might be older, but it's the same process as when you went to undergrad. And I think getting into the best school that you can in your area or whichever of your choosing, and the name and the school's reputation does matter. So if someone has the means or the ability, I say go to the best school that you can. Come to Cox, because they'll take care of you. You're always looking out for different populations. I see it, and I'm speaking with, the different programs that they have. They want to see you succeed, want you to be successful, and they're going to give you everything you need. Of course, you're still going to have to work on it, and just don't be, that's how I would approach it. I'm trying to convince a lot more of my friends to go if they can take the time, take those 2 years, and it will be the best investment in terms of trying to figure yourself and figure the next steps out.
Well, I can fully imagine why you're such an inspiring role model. Bola, the podcast initiative, one great example. So perhaps that same final question to you for anyone considering the Exec MBA, ways to connect with a school that you found particularly valuable, to make sure you're heading to the right place.
Yeah, I agree with Kimberlyn earlier. One of the first things I did was, research the school. And then the deal was really close for me when I visited the school and sat in on the class. And also had a chance to sit next to a classmate, Rajan Patel. And Rajan was like, from the moment I sat down, it was like I was his classmate. He shared his notes with me on the case study. Because again, I'm sitting in this class, I had absolutely had no idea what's going on. So I had a chance to kind of read it as we're going through the class. And shared his notes and kind of brought me up to speed. And I think that inclusive nature that all the students there had really sealed the deal for me. I love the school already. UNC Kenan-Flagler Business School is a great school. It's great on rankings and everything. It was close as far as location. I'm based in Atlanta. It was an hour flight away. So those are all variables that were going in his favor. So when I actually had a chance to go in and have that class, that session, it sealed the deal for me, and he could share from that first person perspective things you can't get from literature online or maybe even like a podcast. Although we gave a lot of information on the podcast, but actually speaking to a person in class and sitting there, or even watching it online, it was a great opportunity to help seal the deal for prospective students.
Well, both of you embody the thoughtfulness, the enthusiasm, the encouragement of others, to be their best selves and to take this step. So I feel blessed that we've had both of you on the Center Court EMBA Festival. Kimberlyn, Bola, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.